Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. It's Thursday morning, the 22nd day of August, and we are raring to go. The putsch is almost complete. Kamala Harris will retrieve the nomination that has been gift-wrapped for her, and the coronation will be official as of tonight. So we'll give you a bunch of analysis on what happened yesterday on day 3 of the Democratic National Convention and the redefinition of masculinity. Guys, if you're not acting like Tim Walz, you're not doing it right, apparently. We'll get into all those details coming up. Also, at 6:35, we'll speak with Sean Carney. He's with 40 Days for Life. He's suing Planned Parenthood over all those free abortions they're throwing around like candy on Halloween there at the DNC. 7:35, Steve Moore, heritage economist. 8:05, our weekly visit with KT McFarland. And then at 8:35, Phil Wegman, one of our favorite reporters in town with Real Clear Politics. I'm Larry O'Connor. Look who's sitting in this morning. Another visit from the effervescent Mollie Hemingway. Good morning, Mollie.
Good morning. It's great to be here with you.
Is it though? You're not necessarily
I'm
a
ready to
morning
go.
person.
I mean, today I am.
All right. That's all that matters. Are the kids back in school yet?
Not yet. A couple more weeks.
Okay. Oh, because they're not in the public school system, thank goodness.
Right.
Yeah. So here's the thing. We're like, all right, Mercedes is here all the time on Thursdays, and Julie Gunlock, of course. Can we just find some other mom in Alexandria the weekend? And you came up. You were the next one on the list. It's all the Alexandria moms from the PTA.
It's a great class of people to be in.
Busy times for us right now in the business that we're in, political analysis, media analysis. It's hard to believe that it's only been 5 weeks since an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and our colleagues in the media don't seem to even think that that's a big story. I'm still personally shook by it. When I saw Donald Trump at the rally yesterday and I saw the new bulletproof glass, it just sort of brought me back to that moment again.
It's absolutely stunning that, it's just a very short period of time ago we had an assassination attempt on President Trump's life, which follows a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
The lawfare, the attempts to imprison and bankrupt him and his family.
The constant rhetoric that he's a threat to our very Constitution and there will be no other free elections after he wins.
And it's not just an assassination attempt. It's one that was basically allowed by the Secret Service through incompetence or worse. Mm-hmm. And there just seems to be a noticeable lack of interest in it. Even at the DNC, you kind of would expect some people to come out, just even for political points, to say, thank God that President Trump survived that, and our condolences to the people who were shot, including the man who was killed and his family. You just have heard nothing about it.
You haven't, and you haven't heard too much analysis about the circumstances surrounding Joe Biden's inexplicable decision to step off the ticket, even though he has spoken a couple of times about it and still not given a clear reason other than, well, I was told I was going to hurt our chances in the House and Senate. Really? That's it? That's the extent of it?
Right. You had the media that spent like a week or two talking about how he had mental decline and patting themselves on the back for what a great job they did with journalism for a couple weeks. And then as soon as he agreed to step down to help the Democrat Party, they're like, we have no more questions.
Right.
We're done.
Yeah, job done. Wash your hands. Oh, although the 2 weeks that they spent talking about his obvious mental decline came on the heels of the multiple weeks they spent saying that conservative media were lying and involved in misinformation by pointing out the fact that he had mental decline.
Our Washington Post here just yesterday was talking about how definitely everybody kind of knew that he was in decline and how it was a problem and how they covered it up. Mm-hmm. That same newspaper had said just the week before the debate that it was deep fakes if you showed videos of his mental decline.
Right. So. Yeah. No. And Mollie's not overstating the case. Literally yesterday, the Washington Post, the 81-year-old had shown signs of slipping for a long time, but his inner circle worked to conceal his decline. Maybe some names? Maybe actually exposés on this inner circle, lying to the American people?
Would Kamala Harris, Joe Biden's actual vice president, be considered part of that inner circle?
That is a great question.
Does that matter if she's running for president?
Well, but then, so all of that, and now we're here, and as I said, the putsch is almost complete. And the media, I don't know, it could just be me. Maybe I've got a jaundiced view on these things. But for the last week or so, or maybe even more, they have actually amped up their assistance to the Democrat Party and the Democrat ticket. And you look at the headlines coming out of Politico and various other news organizations, they literally appear to be reprinting their talking points and reprinting their press releases.
Right. If you just go to the Politico webpage and you go down the page, it is impossible to tell the difference between a DNC newsletter and a supposed news organization.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we don't really have many news organizations. We've got a propaganda press, and we live through it every day. And that's actually dangerous for the republic. You know, it's not about having good coverage for Republicans or bad coverage for Democrats, just reality and news that can help people make informed decisions. That's important for people who want to be self-governed.
Yeah.
And we do not have that right now.
I try to make this point as often as I can if I'm giving speech to young people at Young America's Foundation or working with the new young journalists at National Journalism Center or what have you, is that the First Amendment, and you're sort of saying it right now, the First Amendment is about us. Every single amendment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights had to do with the people. It's not like the founders carved out this freedom of the press because in the future Jim Acosta was going to need protection. No, they knew that having a free press that was not doing what we're seeing right now in terms of just acting as a propaganda organ for the political party in power, that free press was the only way a democracy or a democratic process can work in a republic, because we, the people, need to have that free and independent press. And now the press has relinquished that independence voluntarily.
Well, and the press has received a lot of privilege because it used to have a role of helping the country understand important issues that relate to their self-government. But they haven't done that for a very, very long time. And so that position of privilege that they once had, they should no longer have. And just by way of example, we used to have members of the media moderate debates because we thought they could moderate debates.
That's
that
right.
They would be able to ask questions that were tough for both sides. Once you have a completely propaganda press, like nobody expects tough questions of Kamala Harris from whoever will be doing the debates. And nobody expects anything but tough questions of President Trump. That's not a good situation when you have that, where you're not going to have like a good full litigation of issues.
That is a great point. If you go back, and I'm just a nerd and a news junkie, so I love watching old YouTube videos of debates from the 60s and 70s and 80s, the Reagan debates in particular. And there's two things that strike me about the moderators of those debates. Number one, they ask great questions of both candidates. And the second thing is, half of the people who are asking the questions, I have no idea who they are, because they were just good, grizzled political reporters. They weren't there because they were superstars and they had multi-million-dollar contracts with the networks, and the networks wanted to show off their guy. No, they were anonymous, but they were there to ask questions.
Although I'm not sure the superstar thing is necessarily, like, I just watched this Theo Von interview of Donald Trump.
Yes.
And it was surprisingly interesting just because you had someone who was curious and asking good questions without a political agenda.
Right, without trying to get a gotcha takeaway soundbite. Yeah.
And it was one of the most riveting interviews I've ever seen of the guy.
100% agree. And I commend people to watch the Theo Von interview with Donald Trump. I also don't want Theo Von moderating a debate. I just you know.
I would 100% take him over all the other options.
That's fair, if that's the choice. All right, so this little initial conversation brings us to the subject of Judy Woodruff, a very well-respected capital J journalist here in Washington, D.C., who I believe in the past has been a moderator for certain debates. And she's not just a well-respected journalist in Washington. She's also paid by our tax dollars as she works for the subsidized PBS public broadcasting system. So in a moment, you're going to hear something that Judy Woodruff reported on that very government-subsidized network. And it's one of the most atrocious lies you will ever hear about any political figure. And, of course, it's about Donald Trump. And, of course, it's wrong. And we'll give you all the details in a moment. First, though, it's 5:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Give her what she wants. A diamond from Mervis. The best diamonds are at Mervis Diamond Importers.
Is over there right now working with Netanyahu. The reporting is that former President Trump is on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel, urging him not to cut a deal right now because it's believed that would help the Harris campaign. So I don't know where that, I don't know, who knows whether that will come about or not. But I have to think that the Harris campaign would like for President Biden to do what presidents do, which is work on that one. Yeah.
Of course, nowhere in there does Judy Woodruff reach the realization that Kamala Harris, as vice president, could also not just wait for Joe Biden to work out the deal, but maybe be an active participant in that process. But set that aside for a moment. No one on the panel there, David Brooks, I think, is the token so-called Republican from the New York Times on the PBS panel. Nobody pushed back and said, hold on, Judy Woodruff. You just said it's being reported that Trump is begging Netanyahu to not take a ceasefire deal, thus putting people's lives in danger and continuing a war for his own political purposes. Who's reporting that? What are you talking about? No one on the panel challenged that notion because she's Judy Woodruff, Mollie Hemingway. I mean, you don't chive. If she says it, it's got to be true.
It's just it turned, obviously what she said was completely false, but it's also part of a larger false narrative about foreign policy that relates to both parties. It was not that long ago under the Trump administration that you had peace breaking out in the Middle East, that you had peace agreements being signed between Israel and its neighboring countries, that you had Iran in check. But the corporate media have always tried to portray Donald Trump as being a narcissist when he's dealing with foreign policy, as opposed to helping peace break out all over the world. Mm-hmm. But she says it's been alleged. She doesn't.
She didn't even say alleged. She said reported.
But it was not even reported. What was reported was that there was a phone call between Netanyahu and Trump. Even that turned out not to be true. But nobody ever reported that he was on the phone trying to delay the release of hostages, and it goes completely against everything we know about President Trump's posture toward Israel.
Right. So she has apologized for this. Did she actually apologize, or did she? So there was a written statement issued yesterday. This allegation that Judy Woodruff made on PBS, your text hour subsidized PBS, on Tuesday night. Yesterday, she put out a written statement saying that she was relying on reporting from Reuters and Axios. But as you point out, Mollie, that reporting does not exist.
Well, they never said what she said. Also, they updated their story to say that both sides denied a phone call taking place within hours.
Yeah.
What she said was 4 days after those reports. And she's trying to blame Axios and Reuters, and I'm all for blaming Axios and Reuters.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a long line
for
of people
her own just fantastical imagination and partisan politicking.
Yeah. And, of course, the apology was submitted in writing, maybe handed to somebody that then got published. Not on television, though. She's still, as far as the viewing audience of PBS is concerned, that's still a stated fact.
Right. And I think that's a good way to handle it. When you make a mistake, and let's just say it was a mistake, you correct it in the same place where you made the mistake.
Yeah. This also, though, I think plays into something that we were discussing at the very top of the show, which is this assassination attempt against Donald Trump came after years and years and years of the worst, most vile political rhetoric against him, calling him a traitor to the nation, saying that he stole the election because he was in league with our enemies, saying that he stole classified documents about nuclear secrets and sold them to the Saudis. Remember that one? That was also untrue. And now Judy Woodruff, again, just weeks after a bullet whizzed by his skull at a rally, Judy Woodruff saying that he is in league with a foreign nation extending a war so that American hostages would still be held by terrorists.
And this is why I think it's so important to understand that having a propaganda press is a threat to the country. You might remember in 2020 that the press killed the debate on foreign policy. This was after they claimed that if Donald Trump got elected, we would have nuclear war breaking out, and that Joe Biden was the wisest foreign policy mind we had seen in decades. Mm-hmm. Well, again, during the Trump administration, we had no new wars breaking out. We had the resolution of wars. We had peace breaking out. During the Biden administration, we have absolute risky, chaotic situation between Ukraine and Russia. Mm-hmm. We have the problems in the Middle East. We have problems in China. And everyone just kind of wants to make it go away. Kamala Harris claims that she was right by Joe Biden's side on the Afghanistan withdrawal. She was the last person in the room. And it really does have global consequence when the corporate media lie about the respective positions of these people, about the consequences of their foreign policy. I mean, we have not been in such a hot moment as we are right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's fair to point out that there never was that debate on foreign policy. And then think about it, all the lies they told us about Joe Biden is that he was a foreign policy expert, right? Even though, as has been said, he has been wrong about literally everything for the last 50 years when it comes to foreign policy. Donald Trump was coming off the Abraham Accords. Donald Trump was coming off the decision to pull our troops out of Afghanistan. Would have been great during that debate to have a discussion. Okay, President Trump, how will you execute that plan to withdraw troops versus Joe Biden? That was the one they decided to cancel because of COVID, they claimed.
Well, also, I'm thinking about how there's this narrative put forth by the press that Donald Trump exclusively among all politicians lies.
Yes.
When Joe Biden, during that debate, and I think he repeated it again the other night, claiming that he had not had any American troops killed overseas. At best, that's a lie. Might be worse.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but that is a falsehood, and it needs to be roundly rejected. And it's a way of also, they're forgetting everything, including the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Speaking of lies from the Biden administration, yesterday we had a revision of our unemployment numbers over the course of the last year, and it turns out about 1 million jobs never actually developed and materialized, even though it was reported that they had. We'll get into those details coming up in a moment. Funny how the lies always go in one direction, and we're just supposed to shrug and walk away. It's 5:23.
Now
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36 on this Thursday morning. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. We got a full menu ahead of us, and we can't wait to get to it. Starting at 6:35, we'll have Sean Carney with 40 Days for Life. He's suing Planned Parenthood over their displays at the Democratic National Convention. 7:35, Steve Moore, Heritage economist. 8:05, KT McFarland on foreign policy. And then at 8:35, Phil Wegman, Real Clear Politics. He's at the DNC. I'm Larry O'Connor. Mollie Hemingway's with us this morning. Mollie, thanks for joining us all morning long.
Great to be here with you.
Yesterday, this was a stunning development here on these numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I kid you not, it's always in one direction. If a Democrat is in the White House, they always overinflate the unemployment numbers. And when a Republican, I remember Trump's time in the White House, and they would revise the labor numbers, the unemployment numbers, and it was always in the other. Oh, it looks like we had more jobs last quarter. Am I wrong to think there's a conspiracy afoot here?
Well, the main thing I think is these numbers aren't just a little wrong.
Right.
They are massively wrong. So, a statistical error might be in the 2 to 3% range. And we're talking about a quarter of the number that they had for last year. It's just astronomically high.
Yeah, we're talking 818,000 jobs between April 2023 through March of 2024. Steve Moore, who's going to be joining us later, was on Fox Business, and he reflected in the same way, Mollie.
There's something strange going on in these jobs reports, right? I mean, first of all, for something like 10 of the last 12 months, they keep revising these numbers down. Now what we're finding is that on top of that, whoops, they might have overestimated the number of Americans working by as many as 1 million. It's going to be somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million. We don't know the exact number. That's a giant revision. That is a giant error. Now, I am not accusing the Bureau of Labor Statistics for fudging the numbers.
I am. And here's the thing. We talk about the deep state. We talk about the permanent bureaucracy and permanent political class in Washington. We often talk about it, rightly so, to the alphabet agencies, the people who wield incredible power over us through the FBI, the Justice Department, the military, what have you. But this is also an example of that. There are people permeating our government in something as benign as the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But if they can put their thumb on the scale in one way or another to help their own political party or political agenda that they're aligned with, they'll do it.
Well, we also have a situation where a part of the country feels like the expertise comes from the administrative state and these agencies. And you might recall that when normal Americans have been saying that they think inflation is out of control, they think the job market is very bad, you've had corporate media say, aha, but our buddies over in the administrative state say everything is fine, and so you people are crazy. It feels like the entire regime is gaslighting America about how bad the problems of our economy are.
100% great point, because every time that you say, geez, I can't believe gas costs this much, and hamburgers and eggs and this and that, and interest rates are so high that I can't sell my home because the market is running, all of these economic indicators that show that things are wrong, and all they'll do is say, yeah, but the statistics show that it's fine. And clearly this is part of those statistics. Yeah. Don Lemon the other day, I don't know if you saw this. He's, because he's a man without any sort of, imprint right now. Although, didn't he get a multi-million-dollar settlement with CNN when he separated himself from there? So he doesn't really need a job. He took his camera and his microphone out on the streets, the boardwalk specifically in Atlantic City, New Jersey, asked people who they're voting for. And this exchange really rings true right now. Listen.
4 years ago, it was a lot better. I made a lot more money than I do now.
I know you feel that way, but that's not actually what the record shows. The economy is actually better under Biden. No, I'm serious. That's what the facts show.
Okay, you know what?
No, that's not because I watch CNN.
So this is a man saying, I made more money when Trump was here and the economy was better for me personally. And Don Lemon looks at his face and say, you may feel that way, but you're wrong. I know your personal economic situation better. And all they do is say, well, the numbers show that the economy is better. Biden's whole message was this is the strongest economy on the planet.
They think that if they just say it and repeat it enough, that it will be perceived as true. But the thing is, they are powerful. What they're doing here is very powerful with people. Even to not be able to have a collective conversation where you're commiserating in popular culture about the bad situation economically. It reminds me of when, like Ronald Reagan would be president and we would have a homeless crisis. But then as soon as a Democrat was elected president, we no longer had a homeless crisis.
That's a great point, yeah. Also, by the way, even Kamala Harris has recognized that this is an untenable political message right now. Last week, she put forth radical economic policies, her first policies, actual firm policies that she's proposed, that involve Marxist-style price controls. You know, she's acting like she's running against, an administration of the other party. I mean, she's literally in power right now. She's the incumbent. But even she knows that she can't stand up there and say everything is fine. Just look at this graph.
That's exactly right. I think those radical economic policies are a recognition that we have a very bad situation. But it did also make me think of this other thing. You have this very small subset of people. They live here in Washington, D.C., these never Trump Republicans. And it's like they don't care about the fact that Democrats are harming the First Amendment or using lawfare to go after their political opponents. But now they're endorsing Kamala, even as she goes full communism on some of these economic policies. They always looked pretty foolish. Right now they look patently absurd.
Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, she's the former governor of Rhode Island. She was at the DNC, and one intrepid cable news reporter in the middle of an interview with her actually said, well, can you explain to us why the jobs numbers today were estimated down by nearly 1 million? And here's the Secretary of Commerce's reaction.
When you hear that, do you potentially think that this new numbers could be a liability for this campaign?
No. When I hear that, first of all, I don't believe it because I've never heard Donald Trump say anything truthful.
It is, though, from the Bureau of Labor.
I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with that. Yeah, by the way, she was reacting to Trump talking about how the Bureau of Labor Statistics has estimated things down. Her initial reaction is, well, Trump's lying. That's ridiculous. I don't believe it. And the reporter, good for her, said, no, it literally came from BLS. She's unfamiliar with it.
You're being way too kind to the reporter. Instead of asking a tough question about these horrific job numbers, she merely says, could this look bad for the campaign?
Oh, you're
It doesn't matter if it looks good or bad for the campaign. It matters that Americans are suffering. And then instead of pointing out that they're BLS numbers, she should point out that's an agency you oversee. These are your numbers.
Yeah.
And also, why were your numbers so bad? I mean, there are many questions that would be asked if she were a Republican.
All in all, though, I think it's worth remembering that finally we have the grown-ups in charge, and the chaos of the last administration has been put aside so that experts like Secretary Raimondo can be overseeing such things.
Right, whether it's the economy, the border, crime, which I'm also told does not exist.
Oh, yeah.
Despite
it's
all
safer
my
than it's
friends
ever
saying,
been. Absolutely.
Yeah. And foreign policy. We're just really doing better on every front.
It's 5:40.
Mark Levin, weeknights from 6 till 9.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
As referenced earlier, President Trump did address this anomaly, this mistake, this oopsie-daisy from the Bureau of Labor Statistics amounting to over 800,000 jobs that were misreported to the American people. By the way, real fast, Mollie, if Joe Biden were still the candidate, do you think this correction would have been made? Or do you think they felt like this is a good window to just throw this out there because Kamala's even running against the Biden economy in a small way?
I don't know, but it does seem like we've been getting a lot of information from government agencies now that Joe Biden's no longer running, information about his son and the corrupt dealings that the Biden family business had with foreign countries, which, got you impeached to talk about just a few years ago. And now they're like, oh, it turns out it was all true.
Right. Thank you. Exactly. And I smell a rat here as well. It's just another way for Kamala Harris to distance herself if she can. And certainly the media will allow her to do so from Joe Biden. President Trump did bring this up during a rally yesterday. By the way, you're going to hear a lot from this rally because it was a good one. Trump was really on his game yesterday. Listen to this.
Before we begin, I want to address the massive scandal around the revised job numbers that were just announced this morning, a little while ago, just before I came up. I got to see them. And it really isn't a revision. It's a total lie. Total lie. There's never been any revision like this. They wanted it to come out after the election, but somehow it got leaked. It got leaked. Government leaks, too. The Harris-Biden administration has been caught fraudulently manipulating job statistics to hide the true extent of the economic ruin that they've inflicted on America.
By the way, there's more to this, but that accurate description is not how this has been reported anywhere else in the media, that it was leaked and that they were defrauding the American people by putting out false numbers. That's actually the truth, what Donald Trump just said.
And, we've been talking about this massive 800,000 plus job mistake or revision. This happens after another nearly 500,000 revisions that we've seen over the last year. They keep on putting out these great jobs numbers, and then a few months later, they're like, "Oh, we were off by 100,000," right. And that's even before we got to this moment. So it is absolute defrauding. Financial markets make decisions based on these numbers.
So does our government, by the way, and that's why we're going to let President Trump. I'm going to let you finish, President Trump, in a moment, but. Isn't this worthy of a congressional investigation? Shouldn't there be some? Because it's all these nameless who at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics? Who's responsible for putting these numbers out? Who's responsible for signing off on them? Shouldn't there be a hearing? And so we can actually, because we don't elect these people and they keep their jobs. Nobody gets fired. And our own Congress has to make decisions based on taxes and spending based on these numbers.
Well, Congress needs to have the fortitude to understand that they also have the power of the purse here. If they are paying an agency, if they're giving money to an agency for the purpose of coming up with accurate information, and they're not doing it, whether it's through waste, fraud, or mismanagement, they should not be continuing to be funded.
That's their job. It's their job. All right, back to President Trump here.
The new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the administration padded the numbers with an extra, listen to this one, 818,000 jobs that don't exist. So they said they existed, and they never did exist. They built them up so that they could say what a wonderful job they're doing. No, we've never had numbers like this.
So, listen, it's a great story, and I'm glad that we're talking about it, but does the impact actually resonate anywhere in terms of what's broken in this town?
I think so. I mean, you've got right now a Democrat convention going on that is dealing with almost no policy. But when you're talking to average Americans about why they think the country is headed in the wrong direction, and according to the Real Clear Politics average, only 25% of Americans think the country is headed in a remotely okay direction.
Right.
It's over things like this. But this does speak to such systemic issues like when you remember the Soviet Union and how they would cook the books and make up numbers, it does feel a bit Soviet, like our system has just become completely different than what it was a few decades ago.
By the way, a couple of other items of note in this readjustment of the labor statistics. Number one, the only sector that did not get revised down and still showed some positive growth was government jobs. So there's that, manufacturing jobs, agricultural jobs, all those other service sectors knocked down. State of California, though, turns out over this entire time, state of California had net zero job growth during this entire time, dominated by Democrat policies. It's 5:53.